Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, if you're not satisfied with your love or sex life, I want you to know that I get how painful it is. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do to change things up and get the results you want. But having spent 20 years as a dating and relationship coach, supporting thousands of men to have the relationships and sex they want, I know it's possible for you when you get the right kind of support. As a woman coach, I bring a unique advantage by helping you understand how women think and feel and why they say and do things that can be so frustrating for you. My specialty is being able to tell within minutes why you're losing attraction, trust, or respect from women, and how to turn that around. Even though you've likely been raised to think you should be a man who doesn't need any help, it just doesn't work that way because none of us were handed a guide to love or sex. So every month by application, I open my calendar to a few men for consultations. Men are amazed to walk away from these sessions feeling more confident in and out of the bedroom. Coaching isn't for everyone. I work with men who are willing to be honest about their role in the situations they've created. So if you're still playing the blame game, this isn't for you. But if you're ready to take action and have a love and sex life you feel great about, book a time to meet with me. Go to shanajamescoaching.com/consult and fill out the form to tell me more about you so we can set something up. That's shanajamescoaching.com/consult. Enjoy today's podcast. Welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited to be here today to talk about legacy, which has been on my mind a lot because I've had a couple of friends pass away, sadly, in the past couple months. And, you know, there's this, there's the reality, right? That when we're gone, and what are we actually leaving behind? And I've actually had a couple conversations recently with my dad where he said, you know, I want to figure out what my legacy is. And so that was part of my motivation for this too. So I have an amazing guest, Armando Cruz. Armando, welcome.
Hey, how are you? Thank you, Shana.
Yeah, and Armando's working on a book, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about his book on leaving a legacy. But let me give him a quick introduction for those of you who have not been familiar with Armando. He is a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, an adventurer. We were just talking about a family trip he took and a goal of actually hiking the Appalachian Trail in 5 years with all of his kids. He's climbed mountains and ran over 50 miles a day in the swamp, and he's the proud dad of 3 amazing children, been married for 10 years to his wife, Christian. And he really helps growth-minded and married men show up powerfully in their relationship to their wife and their kids and in their health and business to create a legacy they can be proud of. So thank you for doing this work in the world and for helping men feel, you know, more alive, more satisfied with life.
Thank you, Shana. Yeah, it's been very rewarding, and it always brings a smile when I get to have those kind of conversations and hopefully that kind of impact so that men can impact their lives, their families' lives, their communities, and I believe the world at large when they start showing up in that capacity. So yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, okay, and tell me the name of your book again and the subtitle, because I thought that was fantastic.
Sure. The book is called The Legacy Code: Escape Obscurity and Live a Life Unleashed.
Escape obscurity. Okay, maybe we can dive in there. So, you know, when you're working with a man to create a legacy, it sounds like obscurity is something important that you found that maybe men can get stuck in. Is that true?
Yeah, right. I mean, if we look at the famous quote, I think it was Thoreau that said, men, the mass of men are living lives of quiet desperation. And I feel like too many men and too many people, for that matter, are just occupying space without that intent and without that purpose.
Yes.
And so part of this book and why I've chosen to do this work is because, first of all, I had the privilege and of growing up with an amazing father. So there's, first and foremost, there's a lot of men in this world that don't have that father figure, don't have that great example. I feel amazingly blessed to have my father. I still have him with me. He's still one of my best friends. And he taught me a lot. And he taught me not just by saying stuff, but his actions. And part of that was keep that curiosity. And so one of the things that he taught me most was to continue to learn and to grow and to be honest in the way you show up and be honest in the way you operate in this world. And so that's really what this really comes about. You know, we talk about legacy, and legacy, I like to add a few adjectives before that. I say, let's create a powerful and purposeful legacy.
Yeah.
Not just a legacy, because we're all going to have a legacy.
Yeah.
Whether it's short-lived or not, but we're all going to have a legacy.
Well, right. And interesting that you added the word honest, right? To live honestly. I mean, I think that's in a way where our work overlaps, right? Is helping men really get honest about what their unique legacy is, or what their desires are, as opposed to some box that it should fit in, or, you know, some other man's way of having a legacy in the world.
Correct. No, I agree 100%.
Yeah. What would you say, you know, is there something you've seen that really stands in the way of men thinking about or knowing what their legacy is?
Sure. So here's kind of a simple way to wrap it all into a really graspable concept, which is the way or the life that you live is the legacy that you leave. So people think about the context of what am I going to leave, but that's a result of the way you live now.
Yes.
So being present and being purposeful and clear on the life that you want to live is going to impact the legacy that you're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so the biggest obstacles that I see is a lack of clarity, and in lack of clarity in three different areas. The first area is their vision. The second is their purpose. And the third is in their process. So if you lack any clarity in any one of those, you're going to kind of be stuck. Right. You're going to feel that procrastination. You're going to feel that hesitation or that anchor that you're dragging around, because either you don't have the big vision, so you don't know where you want to go. You don't have that purpose. You don't know that drive. You don't have that drive that's constantly pushing you. And it's an internal drive, not motivation that people are like, oh, I need more motivation. No, what you want is an internal drive. It's that reason why, that purpose that is moving you towards that vision, because it's that important to you. And then the final thing is the process. Okay, what are the steps that I need to take to get there? What does that journey look like? Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I just love you breaking it down so it's so clear, right? You know, and with starting with that internal motivation that's not based on, again, like some kind of box or some external should, or something your parents told you to do, or something the culture says is right. But I do think that we're each born with, you know, some kind of seed, or many of them maybe. I think part of what I see with men in the world is that we lose where they, you know, we as humans, and I think it can be a specific version for men, where there's a kind of a losing sight of what those passions are, because there's so many responsibilities and so many people counting on you, and you know, you've got to be the rock, and then where's the time for your passion and your legacy? So I like you putting this back in front of men.
Here's one thing that I'd like to share, which is like kind of putting it into practice, and what does that actually look like? Yeah. And how does it manifest itself? And the example that I like to give is the following. Every morning I get up around 4 a.m. because I do kind of my morning ritual, and part of it includes going out for a run. Now, my bedroom is on one side of the house. The garage is on the other side of the house, where my stinky running shoes live. Yeah. Okay. Now, because it's so early in the morning, I don't want to flip on lights. Yeah. So I leave everything dark, and I walk very gingerly with my hands out, trying not to run into anything or smash my toes into anything, until eventually I get to the garage.
Yeah.
Now, let's take the step back for a second. When you look at vision, I know what my big vision is. My big vision is I want to, first of all, get to the garage.
Yeah.
Right. That's the destination I'd like to go so that I can go out for a run.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My purpose is this is something that fulfills me. When I go and I do this morning ritual, my day goes better. So I get up at that time and I cross that dark chasm to get there in order to do that. The process is I got to take slow steps to get there. I got to get up and, kind of crawl and gingerly walk through there. When we're going through life in darkness, like that room, what it affects is our speed. And very often what we get as men is impatience. We're moving too slow. Yeah. I feel like I should be there already.
Right.
But where is
and
there?
There's shame. There's often shame around that. Like if I'm not there, it's hard to admit that because I think I should be there.
Right. And so your ability to gain clarity on either your vision, your purpose, or your process is the difference between walking in that darkness slow and gingerly or turning on the lights and just walking freely and running if you wanted to the garage. And so it's just, hey, how can we turn on that light? How can we bring more light into more clarity into your life so you're more clear on your vision, your purpose, or your process?
So you're not suggesting that men necessarily walk through the dark gingerly?
No, exactly. My ability or my inability to move quickly in the dark is what I'm trying to say is that would be much better if we turned on the lights.
Right.
So I'm just giving you kind of like a day-to-day, analogy of it, but really that's it. In life, too many of us are walking in that dark as opposed to flipping on the lights. And that's really, hopefully what this book will bring out is essentially turning on the lights. And, the work that I do as a coach is the analogy I like to give is turning on the lights. Right? Yeah. You hear the word guru be thrown around and people now have a stigma against it. They throw it up in air quotes. And one of, my coach shared something really powerful for me, which now allows me to really embrace that. Like I do say that I'm a guru, but from a different perspective. See, because what he explained to me was gu, it comes from the Sanskrit, means darkness, and ru means light. And so essentially a guru is someone who brings you from the darkness and into the light.
Yeah.
And that's really what that journey looks like, is where are you in the dark and where can I help shine a light to help you take the steps? I don't do it for you. I just help shine the light to show you perhaps what you didn't see. Right.
Well, and I think one of the things as a coach working with men and one of the focuses recently I've had is around, what is true success, right? Not the success, again, that is kind of dictated by the culture or by our parents or by finances or anything, but, the true success of living a life where not only there's the external success, but that internal satisfaction and those feelings of confidence and power. And I see that where so many, and that's kind of the purpose of having Man Alive too, right? Is that so many men I see walking around in the world are struggling in that darkness and then feeling ashamed about it. Like somehow that's not okay to admit because of our cultural context, right? That men are supposed to have it all together. And so, I think one of the ways I turn on the light or help men turn on their own light is by reflecting, what I see in them and going back to this honesty, right? Like, oh, I can see this in you. And sometimes it's something that's a strength and sometimes it's something that I can see that they're avoiding. So I'm curious, how do you help a man turn on the lights? What's one of your ways to give him access to that?
I think one of the easiest ones is getting clear on exactly what you mean when you say. I have these things that I call puffery statements that are very common nowadays. Things like, I want to go to the next level, or I'm going to crush it. And I get the intention behind it.
Yes.
But too many people, too many men throw that around as if that is directional. And
right.
it
As
really
if it has
isn't.
meaning.
Right. It has the meaning that you give it, but
Yes.
too often they're not really clear. It's just like, that's why I call it puffery. It's just something to be able to say because that puts you at the next level of whatever that person. But when you say, I want to go to the next level, well, what's your current level? If I ask that to 100 men, probably 95% of them won't even know what that current level is. So how are you going to get to the next level?
Yeah.
So let's be more intentional and be clear on exactly what it is that we mean.
Yeah.
And one of the things I heard you say was success. Very often when we use the word success is very often attributed to achievement.
Exactly.
And so when we're talking about fulfillment, right, we're talking about two different things. Achievement is an external destination that we arrive at through a process.
Yes.
Fulfillment is the opposite. It's an internal destination that we arrive at through a process, right? Yes. So it's part of that journey. And they're both kind of go the opposite way. An external achievement doesn't provide internal or long-term internal fulfillment. It can make you happy. It makes you excited.
It could, but it's not given.
Right. Because it really depends on if you're doing it for the achievement, then once you get there, all you see is the next step.
Right.
So it's kind of like chasing the rainbow. So you never feel, you never celebrate it.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh, is that all? Now what?
Right.
Versus when you go in, when you're talking about happiness, when you're talking about fulfillment, now we're talking about an internal thing. And so you can't get that by getting something, but you need to get that by being you. Yeah. Right? Being honest and clear on what that actually means. And so that process of gaining clarity of what it is that you actually mean when you're saying what that is, whatever that vision looks like for you, but then also being clear, both the internal and the external that we're moving towards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that, right? It's just such a reminder of, that way that I see men and women both do this. And I actually coach women entrepreneurs also. And every session we start with a celebration, and a lot of them say, God, it's so hard to celebrate. And I say, right, that's why we do this, right? Or even I had a man client recently, and we were working on his relationships with women, and there was a celebration of, I actually asked a woman out, and whatever it was a very simple one. But even simply celebrating that before moving on to that next thing, or I reached this business goal. Or I had a beautiful conversation with my wife where we felt more loving, right? Celebrating those things before, okay, what's next? Otherwise, right, we're never fulfilled or satisfied in life. It's like we're hungry ghosts in that way.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So where would you start, right? If you were a man, say like my dad, who's walking around in the world and he's in his 70s and he's thinking, what am I leaving? What is my legacy, right? What would you say to him?
I think that there's no time like the present to work on it. One of the exercises that really actually helped me as I went through this process was, some people can really just sit down and say, okay, what do I want that legacy to look like? And they can sit down and write it. Mm-hmm. Other people, I didn't find it was easy for me to do that. Yeah. Because there was a lot of judgment. Well, should I be thinking about that? Or, does this really matter? And so what I did was actually took a step back and actually went to the end, to my funeral. Right? And I'm sure you've heard this before, but what I did was essentially I wrote out a eulogy as if my wife was eulogizing me, or
how you actually wanted to be remembered.
Yeah. What would I want her to say about me if she was giving a eulogy? And then I did that with my oldest son. So what would I want my oldest son? And I chose one of the kids just because he's been around longer. So, he was the oldest one and we've had more connections. So I was like, okay, what would I want my oldest son to say to me?
Oof, I just
But I
got
would want,
chills.
yeah, let's just say that there were, I had a lot of tissues, and
Yes.
even reading it, I've read it, and actually I included it in the book just so people can see, get an example. But what that does is that it takes away from you and
Yeah.
it puts it into, okay, well, what's really important to me? If my son is going to be saying my eulogy, what do I want him to say? What do I want him to remember me, to know me by, and to share with the world
Mm.
about who I was as a father, as a man, as a husband, as a provider, as a, as a person who creates impact in this world? What would I want him to say through his lens?
Mm.
Now, granted, it's not him, but when you gain that clarity, then you can kind of start reversing. Okay, well, if I really want this, then how do I need to start living my life?
Yes.
Right. And so for your dad, he's in his 70s, right?
Yep.
I mean, look, we can live way over 100, but we never know. We never
You
know when
never
that
know.
last day is, right?
Yeah.
So, is it pointless to do it at 70? I say no, because
No.
there's plenty of time, I think.
Yeah.
There's still time to look at that. Even if you have one more day, if you gain that clarity
Yes.
and are able to connect with people in a way that you really want to be remembered by, I think it can have that level of impact. And so I would say start there. I mean, what do you want? Like when you're gone, what does that really look like
I
to the people
love
that matter most?
Yeah, it's so touching to me. I mean, I feel like, okay, we could end right here, right? As this first step for someone to actually, for, you listening to do this exercise, to really be willing to face your own mortality, to put yourself at the end of your life and actually look at how you want to be remembered and what you want to be known for. I mean, it's just such a bold and loving act, and and a courageous one. I think it's easy to to not live like like we're going to be gone, right? It's easy to
Right.
live as though we're just going to continue.
Right. And that's one thing, like it's a certainty. We will die. It's not one that we want to think about, but you're going to die. I'm going to die. Everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
At some point we're going to be dead.
Yeah.
So like you said, because time is so precious, and I think that's it, is that we don't realize how precious it is.
Yeah.
Because we try to avoid thinking about the finality of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once you understand that you will die, we will all die, and how can I live and become the best version of myself? How can in the book, one of the things I share is that there are two types of legacy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be an either or, but it should be an and. One of them is your personal legacy. And it's the legacy of how you impact the people that matter most in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that core group, the people that know you the most. How did you interact and impact their lives and leave them something to discover so that their life is better and they can impact more people, right? So that would be your personal legacy.
Yes.
Personal with a capital P, right? And then you have what I call the impact legacy, which is what most people think about when they think about legacy of like, well, I don't know, I don't have a big corporation, or I didn't invent the cure for cancer. I didn't, so those are those really big things that impact the people you don't know.
Mm.
An example that I give, and most people have heard this, so it's not something that I'm making up, but it's like somebody like Steve Jobs.
Yes.
Steve Jobs left a powerful impact legacy. Nobody can deny that the world has been affected by him being alive and his innovations.
Yes.
And the way he sold things and the way he helped people kind of tap into their vision from that, right? He was a visionary.
Yep.
On the flip side, though, everyone that was closest to him said that he was an ass. He was a jerk.
Yep.
People didn't really love the way he treated them.
Yes.
What they did do was he had a gift for tapping in and sharing a vision that enticed people. And that's what they wanted, but they really disliked the interaction with him.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at that within the context of family, if you've left a powerful impact legacy, but your kids don't know you and they completely hate you, I feel like that's a failure, because the people that matter most in this world, the people closest to you, if you've ignored them, I think you've missed a big part of this. And in fact, there's some speeches or some writings of Steve Jobs that he goes back and he's like, all this time I was spending all this time on innovating for all those people, and I neglected the people that matter most.
Well, right. And actually, I mean, part of what I see in working with men is that these up close and personal relationships can be the most vulnerable. You know, it can take more courage to go to your child and say, wow, I really think I misunderstood you, or I'm sorry for how this interaction went. That can actually take more courage than, you know, building a multi-million-dollar business or making that next business deal. So I really appreciate that you're bringing both of those pieces for legacy, and not just what's this, you know, this broader impact that you're having on the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything, or let's say if there was something that you wanted to leave men with, you know, and granted, again, we could talk about this for hours, and I highly suggest that you get on the list, because your book isn't published yet, right? But I imagine you have a release.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll put a link on my website. I think you had asked me, so it's armandocruz.com, and that'll be the hub for everything. But I'll have a thing there where you can get on the book launch team, get the book early, and be part of that whole process. So that'll be fun.
Good. Okay. And for today, what do you want to leave men with?
I'd say be courageous enough to step into that last moment. We talked about that, putting yourself at the end, right? I think Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, right? So if you think about the end and take somebody that you really care about, what would you want them to say? What would you want them to say when you're gone and share with the world? How would you want them to remember you? And what would you have liked to have left this world from that perspective? If you can take time just to do that, I think it's going to open your eyes, because you're going to start seeing, you're going to start creating the roadmap for how you want to start living your life. Because once you're clear on what that vision looks like, you also now can start looking into, okay, well, I just said all of this. This is my vision. This is what I would really love. Why is this important to me? That's the next question. Ask yourself, why is this important to me? Because that's going to give you your purpose. That's what's going to drive you. And then the final thing is the process, just work backwards. Well, and this is important to me. This is what it looks like. What would that take on a daily basis? I'm a big proponent of chipping away daily at things. I'm more interested in being consistent over a lifetime than doing one thing amazing for a day or a week, because you haven't created you don't create the habit, you don't create the long-term impact by doing it once or even a week. You do it every single day. How do you chip away at that every single day? And I use the word chip away very much on purpose, because to me, one of the ways that I look at this process when I work with men, and even just what it means to kind of shine, is the process of the Michelangelo and the David, right? So the David is considered one of the most spectacular sculptures ever made. And when they asked Michelangelo, how were you able to create such a masterpiece? And he said, well, basically I chipped away everything that wasn't David until the true David showed up. So basically in life, we have the opportunity to chip away all the crap, all the stuff that's covering us, covering our authentic, best, greatest, and grandest version of ourselves that, we think we need to put on, kind of like coats, in order to show up better. But the reality is showing up as our most honest self and our truest self and chipping away all the other crap is really was where the power and the impact and the fulfillment is going to come in.
Yeah.
Does that?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I really just love that, when you go to the end, right? When you're willing and courageous enough to look at the end of life and come backwards and then, start to take these daily actions. It's to me, it's kind of like the Matrix, right? Where you wake up out of this kind of sleepful or sleepwalking that many people do in the world and actually come alive, right? And start to really look at how can I forward my purpose, or how can I leave my legacy, or how can I take the next step in this very moment or in this interaction. And I see so much more fulfillment happen for men, when I support themselves. And I imagine when you support them in actually living in such an awake way, in this way.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I agree with you.
Thank you. Thank you for your own clarity and your own commitment and living this daily. I can feel it in you. I can feel it in the way you talk. I can feel it in the way you speak about your commitments, and, you then model that and make it possible for other men. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Shayna. It's been an honor.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.